I mean, we're all going to have setbacks, right? I mean, not everyone gets a trophy. Sorry, right? Sorry,
Hmm.
kids. Like, So, look, I turned our book into something cool, created this charity, and it led to me creating my dream job and a charity that's raised millions to help kids. You just got to find the silver linings. Like every day there's setbacks, right? Just the successful people just go, oh, okay, well, that sucks. And you learn, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And you move on.
Guys, welcome to Keep On Pushing Stories, where you know what we do. We share real life stories of inspiration, resilience, persistence, right? We take a deep dive into the lives and the mindsets of people who have pushed past their limitations, overcome obstacles, step out of their comfort zone to achieve something remarkable. And today, I'm so excited to welcome my friend Ross Bernstein to the show. Ross, welcome to Keep On Pushing Stories, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Devon. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. How was your Thanksgiving, by the way?
It was great. I ate way too much.
Welcome to the club. But and welcome to the show. We like to start by asking people, Ross, what it is that they do, how do they serve, how do they bring value to the lives of others. So please share that with us.
Sure. So I've written about 50 sports books, and like you, I work as a full-time professional speaker. I keynote about 130 conferences per year. I've spoken on all 7 continents, so I love traveling. I travel with my wife, so we enjoy the ride. And I study as I've been a working member of the media for the past 25 years. So I've been able to interview thousands of athletes and coaches, and I study just what it is that makes the great ones great, and then I translate that back to business, to sales, to leadership. So I tie sports to business, and I love studying guys like you, former Olympians, and then figuring out what the practical business application is.
Right. But I think you're also involved in a charity work as well, aren't you?
I am, yeah. It's called the Herb Brooks Foundation, and it actually ties into my story a little bit that I'm going to share. So
Hmm.
I'll tease your listeners and say it's a cool thing, and I'll kind of touch on it at the end of my story.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to connect with you, Ross, because they wanted to um, engage as a motivational speaker, keynote speaker, or even to support your foundation, how would they find you?
Sure, I'm on LinkedIn and I've got a website, rossbernstein.com.
All right, cool. Simple enough. So here we are, the pinnacle of the session here. We would love to hear your keep on pushing story. Love to hear of a time when you had to overcome an obstacle or push out of your comfort zone. So please do tell us.
Cool. Okay, so my story kind of goes back, but so I grew up in Minnesota, and where we love hockey. And when I was 10 years old, I watched this hockey game called The Miracle on Ice. And this was 1980. And it was the Americans, all college kids, and they beat the Soviet Union, the greatest hockey team ever assembled, a team that hadn't lost a game in 20 years. And the coach was a guy named Herb Brooks, who was one of my heroes from Minnesota. And he led the Golden Gophers to 3 national championships. My family's huge Gopher fans at the University of Minnesota, and he took a lot of those kids from Minnesota, and they went on and they beat the Soviets, and it was such a big deal. They called it a miracle on ice, and just like your movie Cool Runnings, they turned it into a movie called Miracle, where the actor Kurt Russell plays Herb Brooks. And anyways, as a 10-year-old kid, I begged my parents to let me play hockey. So I went to the Herb Brooks hockey camp when I was 10 years old. I was the worst guy there. I won the most improved award for the guy who sucks the most. and but it got me into playing hockey, and I grew up in a small town, so I got to play right away. And anyways, I wound up attending the University of Minnesota, like everyone else in my family had done, and got season tickets to watch the Gopher hockey team play. And I wound up taking a class. It was a 1 credit physical education course the players taught for their scholarships, allegedly. Got to be friends with a bunch of guys in the team. They encouraged me to walk on to the varsity, to try out for the team. I did. I lasted about 10 minutes. Didn't go well. I wound up checking our team captain, trying to impress the coaches. It was not a smart thing to do. But I wound up getting cut, and but the coaches liked me, and they asked me if I wanted to be the team mascot, Goldie the Gopher. In fact, this your viewers can see that's actually my gopher head.
Ah,
So I was a giant, smelly rodent mascot. I did it. I had a blast. I entertained all these people for years for University of Minnesota athletics, and had a ball. I got in a lot of trouble, so much trouble that one day when I was a senior, a publisher approached me and said, "We'd like to write a book about all the trouble you've gotten into." And I didn't think much of it, but I thought, what if I wrote a book? Um, about the history of gopher hockey, my passion from Goldie the Gopher's point of view. So I told my parents I wanted to use all my graduate school money. My two big brothers had gone on to get their Ivy League MBAs. They were working on Wall Street. They thought this was going to be a huge failure, but I said, I want to work in sports. That's my passion. I don't want to work on Wall Street. So I wrote this book called Gopher Hockey by the Hockey Gopher, and it became a bestseller. And 50 books later, I made a career out of it. But along the way, I wanted to becoming good friends with Herb Brooks. In fact, I wrote a lot of hockey books, and we became buddies. And years later, he asked me to write his book, and it was such a big deal because he was my hero, he was my mentor, and I was actually golfing with Herb the morning of August 11, 2003. The book was almost finished, and Herb had to leave early that day, about the ninth hole, because he had to go to a speaking engagement, what you and I do, in Chicago for a big pharmaceutical sales conference. So we said goodbye, and I finished out the round of golf, and I was excited. I was going to be in business with Herb Brooks, my hero, my mentor. I couldn't even imagine how this was going to grow my business in ways I couldn't even imagine as a young speaker, author. And when I was driving home that day, I turned on the radio and I heard the news that Herb didn't make it. He was killed in a car accident that day driving home. And I just cried and listened as people called in on the radio and talked about hockey and sports and how it had been, woven throughout the fabric of their communities and had bonded fathers and sons and mothers and daughters. And I just thought, what could I do? So I decided to turn our book project into a memorial. And I wrote a couple books about Herbie and his legacy. This one's called America's Coach, but it's about Herb Brooks, and we created a charity called the Herb Brooks Foundation with his family. And to date, we've raised several $1 million to help kids play sports. Kids who are, are socioeconomically disadvantaged, or kids who have special needs, autism, Down syndrome, or are sight impaired, hearing impaired, or whose parents are overseas in the military taking care of us. We take care of them. So it's been this full circle story of kind of making lemonade out of lemons, about turning a positive into a negative. And I look back and I think, my biggest failure, not making the Gopher hockey team and pursuing my passion because I tried to take out our star player and impress the coaches, turned into this real positive of being the mascot and making that a whole new adventure and making a career out of it. And now, as a professional speaker like you, Devon, I get to help people all over the world to be better and to think differently and to challenge them. So it's been a real full circle story about a setback that gets turned into a comeback, and that's my story. So it's been pretty awesome.
yeah, a lot to unpack here, Ross. Thank you for that. I'm actually thinking back to 10-year-old Ross playing and clearly sucking and and being adjudged the most improved player. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I have to admit that I've never been in a situation where I sucked in terms of being an athlete, and would look at somebody who's and think to myself, even today, like they don't belong, but yet they still go out and compete with such tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start there with your story, because I can imagine someone who's new on a sales team who's just a greenhorn and suck totally at what they do, but yet rise to the occasion.
Well,
Can you think back to what your mindset
hmm,
was like back then?
yeah. That's a great question. I've never been asked that before. Yeah, I just love sports. I grew up in a small town, so I got to play, three varsity high school sports when I was a freshman. I played football and baseball and hockey, and in the summer I played basketball. I mean, that's just how it is in a small town. It's not like today where everyone has to specialize and it's gotten so competitive and all the psychotic parents want their scholarships. It's interesting. Herb Brooks would coach, a couple different Olympic teams along the way. And he always used to say that his dream team would be a team of orphans, no parents screwing things up, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can appreciate that. But, I think Herb liked me because even though I wasn't good enough to play on the hockey team, I still wanted to be a part of the team. and I want to entertain the fans and be a part of it. Because not everyone gets to be a star, as you know, right? And you got to find different roles and role players. And my role is to entertain the crowd, make sure everyone had a great time, and that way there would always be a full packed house, right? And that gives the team a home field advantage, a home ice advantage. So I think Herb
Hmm.
really liked that about me, that I was a young go-getter, that even though I wasn't good enough to play, I still want to be a part of it. And he was smart. He surrounded himself with people who could help him in any way, whether it was on the ice or off the ice, great assistant coaches. It takes a team, as you know, right? There's in your world, people had to prepare the sled and wax the rails and do all the things that made it necessary and able for you to go. But I think her realized that will beats skill. It's not everyone's going to be a superstar. You got to find different hustlers and grinders and people that do
Hmm.
different things. And that was my thing. I loved hockey. I still play. I'm passionate about it. It's a lifelong sport, and but I think the 10-year-old kid just was into something new and different and thought, wow, this is really cool. And I was inspired, just like you, right? You're coming into the bobsled team. It was inspirational. Kids in Jamaica didn't grow up dreaming of being bobsledders, and you said, now you
Indeed.
can, right? And that's what it's all about. And there's no barrier, there's no limit, right? If you're struggling in business, there's no rules. When I wrote my first book, I had to leverage my graduate school money. Now anyone can write a book, right? You can put it on Amazon. You can,
Yeah.
I wanted my own TV show. Now you can have a YouTube channel. The barriers of entry have there's so much disruption, right? Like anyone can do anything now. So, if you want to learn something, you go on YouTube and you can learn how to do anything. It's just really remarkable. And if you want to be a speaker, you can speak. You find your audience, you find your tribe, and I think that's what it's all about, right? You overcome those setbacks, and we're all gonna have stuff that comes up, right? That's the deal. And I'm sure you would have loved to have won many gold medals, right? And beaten Usain Bolt in a sprint, right? But there's certain things we can and can't do, so you make the most of it.
Yeah, I love that though. Will beats skill, and that's I think a lesson that all of us, regardless of what our track in life is, can learn. So you here it is that you are a fan of Herb, and you finally get to be working with your hero, your idol, and wow, tragedy hits. Um, people go through similar stories all the time. So please help us or help them find a path through that. That thing that you're working for so long is finally coming into view and it gets taken away.
Yeah.
Um, how do you handle that punch in the emotional solar plexus?
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to have setbacks, right? I mean, not everyone gets a trophy. Sorry, right? Sorry,
Hmm.
kids. Like, So, look, I turned our book into something cool, created this charity, and it led to me creating my dream job and a charity that's raised millions to help kids. It's, you just got to find the silver linings. Like every day there's setbacks, right? Just the successful people just go, oh, okay, well, that sucks. And you learn, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And you move on, right? In our world, we get, for every gig you and I book, we're going to lose five that we at least know about, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
deal with rejection every day. You're applying for job interviews every day, and some days they're going to go, Devon, you're our guy. Whatever you want us to pay you, we're going to pay you. Come talk, inspire our team. We're going to love you, and if you do a great job, it might lead to 10 more opportunities and a whole bunch of money, and you're all excited. And then the next day, you get an email saying, Devon, you suck. We're not hiring you. We found someone prettier, smarter, more qualified, better, and you feel terrible. And that's my world every day, right? That's
Yeah.
what we do. You're not going to be successful in sales or as a leader if you can't deal with rejection. In sports, you manage rejection. That's the common denominator, right? You manage failure. I interview guys like Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky. They're managing failure. It's about consistency. It's about that long-term grind. How do so I'm one of the only celebrity sports speakers that I'm not the hero of my own story. You know, I talk about all these other great people. I say, here's what you can learn from Tom Brady or Devin Harris, right? Here's people that have overcome adversity. Tom Brady he wanted to be a first round pick. He was the 199th overall pick of the sixth round. You know what that did
Yeah.
for Tom Brady? It put a big old chip on his shoulder. And he said, oh, I wasn't good enough for you? Okay, we'll take that. And they channel that negativity and they turn it into something positive. And that's what makes the great ones great. It's not the guys who are awesome. It's these hustlers and grinders and guys who came from nothing. They're the ones who are hungry and have something to prove. So great coaches, they recruit those type of kids, right? They
Yeah.
play with an edge, right? They got a little nasty to them, right? They want to win. And you got to put together a whole team of people in sports, business, life, and I just love studying it. It's always been my passion. As you can see, I surround myself
Yeah.
with things that bring me joy and happiness. And I've sports is one of those things that can bring everyone together, and that's why I love it. That's why you love it.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's so many life lessons to learn from sports, whether you are, super talented and at the top of the food chain, or like you say, a guy who just is passionate about it, not necessarily as skilled, um, but have a lot to prove, right? The chip on your shoulder. Wow, Ross, this is an amazing story. Just the and the lessons that you are sharing with us, about managing failures. We know it sounds cliche, turning lemons into lemonade, but yeah, you were dealt a hand that many of us are dealt with. Like things are out of our control. Herb got killed right on the cusp of you guys going off to do amazing things, and you're able to turn that into something good, raising money for kids, millions of dollars to help them play sports. Thank you for uh, your passion, which still shines through, your tenacity, the fact that okay, you may not be skilled, but you certainly have the will. Um, and that, my friend, epitomizes the keep on pushing philosophy.
Mm.
And I think it's going to inspire many people who may not start out as a brighter star, but aspire to be a hero in
Mm.
their own stories. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Ross, and keep on pushing stories.
Thank you, Devin. Great to be with you.
Indeed. And guys, if you find this useful, if you're inspired by it, please share it with others. Um, Follow us for more amazing stories like this, and of course, keep on pushing.